Hi guys, welcome to another video. I thought we'll do a quick video on a physiology topic that both undergraduate medical and dental students have to study. It's a topic that's essential to understanding the key concepts, not only to blood pressure, but it lies at the center of most commonly prescribed drugs that patients normally walk in with. It's also a topic that's very heavily researched. There's been entire books written on this, and the lectures normally in this take several weeks at university. Because of this, the whole thing can sound a bit complicated, but at the center it's quite simple. So students often end up simply just memorizing everything, and it can get a little bit confusing. The problem is that since this system affects pretty much the whole body, you can't just memorize all these effects, it'll just take too long, and answering questions in the exam quite tricky. So I'm talking about the Renin Angiotensin Aldersterone system, RAAS sometimes is abbreviated as, and I'm hoping to give a nice little overview of the whole system here. So I'm hoping that this video not only simplifies the whole system, but it also helps you understand how the system works. So whatever question pops up on an exam paper, you'll just be ready. But not only that, also if you understand the system, you'll become to understand the most commonly prescribed medications and how they affect the system. I thought I'd do it in like a PowerPoint presentation type of way. Let's see how it goes. What I've done is I've tried to keep it as least slides as possible, and I'm hoping just to try and talk through the whole thing. Hopefully it makes sense. So let's have a look. So the Renin Angiotensin Aldersterone system is basically a story about blood pressure, or more accurately, about blood pressure regulation in the body. It involves a group of hormones that act together to regulate blood pressure, and it's called a system because each part influences other parts, and they are all necessary for the system to function properly. It involves multiple organs to maintain: the kidney, liver, lungs, heart, and all the organs and hormones come together, a bit like an orchestra, to carry out the desired effect. And just before we get into the system, I just want to do a little bit of recap. You've got the kidney here, just a cross section. It's a very simple recap. Parts of this will be coming up as part of the system. This is a cross section of the kidney, the renal artery going inside, renal vein coming back out, and you've got the outside part of the kidney called the cortex, inside the part called the medulla. And just like arteries, wherever you go in the body, have a very common pattern, as in they slowly go into capillaries at the capillary bed to any part of the body, up to a cellular level. In the kidney, it's a little bit different, where it goes into little functional units called nephrons. Just another picture here, how the kidneys, if you break apart, go into small little things called the nephrons. Just a little reminder that the nephrons start at the cortex, go dip down into the medulla, and then come back up again. So starting from here all the way down, dip back up again, then they come down again in the collecting duct. An overview of just a kidney nephron. You got the glomerulus here. So you got the efferent arteriole coming in into a tightly condensed glomerulus, and then the efferent arteriole going out, and blood entering the nephron really has two functions of how it can, or two destinations. One is that it comes out as filtrate, or it just continues on in the efferent arteriole. Just remember that there's no blood in the filtrate, just small solutes and water, and there's no blood cells, there's no large proteins, unless there's something wrong in the kidney or the nephron, or you've got a systemic issue like diabetes or something, but we'll get into that into a different video. So we've got the glomerulus coming down into the Bowman's capsule, and then continue with the nephron. You've got the proximal convoluted tubule going down to the thin descending limb of the loop of Henle. On this diagram, it doesn't really show the other part. It doesn't label it anyway, which is the thin ascending part of the limb or thin ascending part of the loop of Henle, and then the thick ascending limb or part of the loop of Henle going up to the distal convoluted tubule and all the way down to a collecting duct. The loop of Henle was named after the chap who found it, I think he was German, Frederick Henley, but I think he had that long name, couple of I think 4 or 5 parts of his name. But anyway, just another reminder, in the loop of Henley, you got each part acting in his own mechanisms in place, as in thin, descending, ascending part differences. One part lets water in but not ions, and other one lets ions in but not water, just to maintain its function. And the relationship between the nephron structure and function is what I'm getting at, as in the Bowman's capsule is responsible for the ultrafiltration, and then just goes through a cycle of selective reabsorption, osmoregulation, selective reabsorption, and osmoregulation again, depending on where you are in part of the nephron, starting from the proximal tubule, going through the loop of Henle, then the distal tubule, and then the collecting dot. Again, we will be going through this in a lot more detail in the video for the kidney nephrons and the microanatomy of them. So the Renin Angiotensin Aldersterone system involves mainly these 6 players. You got the angiotensin renin, which is also known as the angiotensinase. I'm happy I said that right, because I normally mess that up. You got the angiotensin 1, the angiotensin converting enzyme, the angiotensin 2, and aldosterone. I've been scouring the whole internet to find the best diagram or the simplest diagram to explain this, and these two seem to be it. So if you're watching this YouTube video, what I would do is hit the screenshot button and get both of these in, because these, I think, are the most simplest explanation diagrams that are of the whole system. You don't have to go through books and books and books and spend hours on this. Just these 2 diagrams will just simply explain everything. What we'll do is we'll switch over between both of these as we give the explanation. So before we get into that, I mean, this is again a diagram of kidney nephron. We're talking about the starting part of the kidney nephron here, the efferent arteriole going into the glomerulus, and then the efferent arteriole, and this is where the filtrate will be going into the Bowman's capsule, and then down to the proximal tubule down there. It's upside down, but it just makes so much sense if you just do it this way. So if you think about it, what is the kidney doing really? The kidney is maintaining your blood pressure, because if you think of the whole blood pressure system in your body, you've got like a closed system where there's a liquid flowing around, a little bit like the water that flows through your radiators around the house. You need to maintain a constant blood pressure, or homeostasis. Within limits of where your body likes it. You want ideal blood pressure all throughout your body, just so you got the correct amount of oxygen flowing around and proper perfusion of all the tissues around your body, and you want to maintain that. And the kidney is mainly responsible for stuff like that, along with the heart. So the story really starts this part here, the so-called juxtaglomerular cells, which are smooth muscle cells around the efferent arteriole. They synthesize and they store and secrete the enzyme renin. Let's have a look. If the other diagram might be better to show this. Yeah, renin, right here. So let's see what happens. So basically, if blood pressure drops to the kidney, for any reason, these special cells in the kidney detect the change and they release renin into the bloodstream. Renin itself doesn't really affect blood pressure. What it does instead is that it floats around and it converts any inactive form of angiotensin, which is produced by the liver, into angiotensin 1. This is actually the rate limiting step in the whole process. These inactive forms of angiotensin, which are produced by the liver, are not able to alter blood pressure until the renin changes them into angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 itself is able to alter blood pressure to some degree, but it's not strong enough to have these large changes. Instead, the angiotensin 1 is converted into angiotensin 2 by an enzyme called angiotensin converted enzyme, or ACE enzyme, sometimes it's known as. And this is the enzyme that's normally shut down by drugs called ACE inhibitors. High blood pressure medication. But we'll get into that in a different video. Now we are angiotensin 2 now. Angiotensin 2 is a very strong hormone, and it acts directly on blood vessels to increase blood pressure. It also has another important function of stimulating the release of aldosterone. So let's look at this diagram here, the next one. So what's happening is you got a decrease of blood flow to the kidney, which is recognized by the juxtaglomerular cells, which causes them cells to release renin into the bloodstream. Angiotensin, which is produced by the liver, has released angiotensin into the bloodstream. Renin meets this and converts it into angiotensin 1, which floats around the blood. One thing I forgot to mention was that the angiotensin converted enzyme, you see in textbooks say that is converted by the surface of the pulmonary and renal endothelium, as in this is where mainly that enzyme is, but really this angiotensin converting enzyme is in many different parts of the body, many different arterioles, but it mentions this because this is the most commonly found density of where you get this enzyme. So you've got the surface of the pulmonary and renal endothelium. So as the angiotensin meets this enzyme, it's converted into angiotensin 2. Now, this is the part where people normally just trying to memorize all the effects that it has. But the thing you need to really remember is that angiotensin 2, its prime job is to increase the blood pressure again. Because this is the main part, really. This is the main part of the system. So it's going to try and affect as many different parts of the body which are responsible for maintaining blood pressure. It's going to try and act on different systems. So what it's doing here is that all these positive effects here is increasing different mechanisms to try and bring the blood pressure back up. So you see here that it increases the sympathetic activity. It does this by several mechanisms. It goes to the brain and tells it to increase the heart rate, affects the barrel response, the carotid arteries, affects the barrel reflex response, affects the nerve endings. Basically, it increases the sympathetic activity, as in it constricts the arterioles a little bit tighter to increase the blood pressure in the system. Also make sure that the heart rate increases. It also has effect on the tubular system reabsorption. This is talking about inside the kidneys itself, where it reabsorbs salt, calcium, sodium chloride. Why does it do that? Because water normally follows salt. If you increase sodium anywhere into a tissue, normally water follows back in. So if it reabsorbs sodium back into the body, instead of letting it be released into urine, water will naturally follow back into the body and therefore increasing the blood pressure. So we've got the water retention there. Also, it affects the adrenal gland on top of the kidney. Well, the cortex of it, where you've got aldosterone, powerful vasoconstrictor. It causes large increases in blood pressure, but is more important because it can actually change the baseline filtering activity of the kidneys. Aldosterone, causes the kidneys to retain both salt and water, which over time increases the amount of fluid in the body, and therefore increasing blood pressure again. You've got the arterial vasoconstriction, increasing the blood pressure, and one main one to mention is that it affects the pituitary gland, the posterior lobe, and increases the ADH, antidiuretic hormone, which acts on the collecting dot in the nephron, causing water to be reabsorbed back in the body. And that's pretty much the system, really. So you got this, and it's all another summary here. But those are different mechanisms of how angiotensin 2 causes the blood pressure to be increased again. Then increases on the central nervous system of stimulating thirst. Therefore, you got the urge to drink more water, again increasing blood pressure, adding more fluid into the system. This all is fed back to the system, and eventually the blood pressure will increase. So therefore, after a period of time, the angiotensin 1, angiotensin 2, aldosterone, they're all broken down into other molecules. The way to think of it is that the renin-angiotensin system as a whole responds to both short-term and long-term variations in blood pressure. It is activated by sudden drops in blood pressure, as those that occur, for example, in blood loss, but also is stimulated by smaller, less dramatic, blood pressure fluctuations. So it's not as a acute response. I mean, it's also like a long-term regulator of blood pressure. It has like a constant baseline activity. The way to think of it is a bit like the accelerator pedal of your car. You need the constant pressure of that accelerator to keep the car moving forward, like this does to keep the blood pressure up and running. But sometimes, if there's a sudden drop, you step on that accelerator a bit more and you get a sudden thrust forward, even if you just want to maintain it at the same speed. Likewise, the constant activity of the renin-angiotensin system keeps the blood pressure flowing steady over long term, and the sudden bursts is when the quick response is needed, and therefore you maintain the homeostasis. That is a very simple summary of the whole system. The idea is basically, is this here, increases cardiac output. That's one of the main ones that probably pops in the exam. Again, cardiac output being, from what I remember, heart rate times stroke volume, I think it is, meaning the amount of blood the heart, both the left and right ventricle, pumps out in 1 minute. I think last time I checked it was like 5 liters for an average male, 50 kilos. But anyway, double check that. But that's the whole nitty gritty of the whole system. That should be it. Hopefully, if you understand that, you can build upon that where we get in the lectures, and everybody likes asking different parts of the system. But most likely, you'll be asked the enzymes in the system, especially the angiotensin converting enzyme, but that's where most of the medication acts on, and where these enzymes are produced, and location of the enzymes, and aldosterone release as well. And that's it really. That's pretty much a nice little summary. We might have made a video where we go into a lot more detail, but that's pretty much it. So I hope that helps. If you like what you see, click like and press the subscribe button, and we'll be doing a lot more videos here. Take care.